Tensions are rising in the Middle East. Israel has openly threatened to detain any humanitarian fleet attempting to break the Gaza blockade. The stern warning came directly from Israel's National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who declared that no foreign ship will be allowed to enter Gaza's waters. Yet, in the midst of danger, Indonesian volunteers are stepping forward with a bold move. Since August 31, 2025, members of the Indonesia Global Peace Convoy, IGVC, have arrived in Tunisia. Their mission is clear: to join the global summit Flotilla, sailing towards Gaza with humanitarian aid. This is not symbolic solidarity. It is a real attempt to deliver supplies to civilians trapped in one of the worst humanitarian crises of the decade. Support has also come from Indonesia's ambassador to Tunisia, Zohairi Misrawi, who pledged diplomatic assistance to protect the volunteers. His statement emphasized that Indonesia's involvement is not only a civil initiative, but also carries the spirit of humanitarian diplomacy. But beyond noble intentions, the harsh reality in Gaza remains. Airstrikes continue to pound the enclave, with casualties increasing daily. In the past 24 hours alone, 9 Palestinians reportedly died from starvation. Knowing the risks, the Indonesian volunteers refuse to retreat. Instead, they press forward, determined to test their resolve on the perilous waters toward Gaza. Under global scrutiny, Indonesian volunteers in Tunisia are undergoing crucial preparations. For 4 days, they train intensively, not just in sailing techniques, but also in mental readiness to face worst-case scenarios, including interception by Israeli forces. For them, risk is not a deterrent but a challenge to be faced in the name of humanity. Meanwhile, Ambassador Zohairi Misrawi is mobilizing diplomatic channels. He has reached out to Indonesia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and ambassadors of countries along the flotilla's route, emphasizing that the safety of Indonesian volunteers must be a top priority. Diplomacy, he said, should serve as the first shield before the ships confront Israel's blockade. Conditions in Gaza, however, continue to deteriorate. Explosions rumble across the coastal strip. Hospitals are short of medicine. Families share pieces of stale bread just to survive. Images of starving children and desperate parents now dominate international media, stirring global sympathy and calls for action. For the Indonesian team, this tragedy is a moral summons. They are neither soldiers nor politicians, only civilians armed with courage. With that resolve, IGVC has confirmed its departure on September 4, 2025, joining the international flotilla. The world now waits to see whether the mission will reach Gaza safely or face a direct confrontation at sea. The Indonesian convoy is part of a much larger effort. The global summit flotilla consists of dozens of ships from across the world, some carrying medical supplies, others loaded with basic food and emergency aid for Gaza civilians. According to organizers, over 40 countries are represented, with hundreds of activists from diverse religions, professions, and nationalities. Indonesia stands among the largest delegations from Southeast Asia. Yet, memories of past tragedies still linger. The world has not forgotten the 2010 raid on the Mevai Marmara, when Israeli commandos stormed the flotilla in international waters. Dozens were killed, many more injured. That grim episode casts a long shadow over the 2025 mission. Indonesian volunteers know the risks, but they insist history must not paralyze humanitarian action. Instead, it reminds them of the dangers ahead and the heavy moral responsibility they now carry. Meanwhile, Israel has increased naval patrols in the eastern Mediterranean. Official warnings have been sent, declaring that any vessel attempting to breach Gaza will be treated as a threat. Ships will be stopped, inspected, and seized if necessary. These threats escalate political tension and force flotilla organizers to intensify coordination at the international level. For the Indonesian volunteers, the choice is clear. They refuse to remain bystanders. With solidarity as their compass, they prepare to sail into one of the most dangerous maritime routes in the world. Support for the Indonesian volunteers is growing, not only from officials but also from the public at home. Across cities like Jakarta, Surabaya, and Makassar, people hold solidarity rallies, raising funds and sending prayers. Social media is flooded with messages of encouragement under the trending hashtag Indonesia for Gaza. Still, public enthusiasm cannot erase real concerns. Experts in international relations warn that the 2025 flotilla could spark new diplomatic conflict. If Israel launches an interception, it would endanger not only the volunteers but also regional relations, particularly with nations backing the convoy, including Indonesia. Competing narratives have emerged. Israel accuses the flotilla of being a political provocation, while organizers stress the mission is strictly humanitarian. In Tunisia, the atmosphere is tense. Indonesian volunteers attend final briefings with international coordinators, studying the maritime route ahead. They also rehearse emergency procedures in case their ships are stopped or detained. Every possibility is considered, yet no one can guarantee safety on waters guarded by Israel's navy. Still, faith drives them forward. The volunteers insist this mission is more than delivering aid, it is about proving moral courage. They say the world must not remain silent as Gaza suffers behind the blockade. With limited resources, they prepare to challenge not only the waves of the sea but also the waves of politics and armed force standing in their path. As departure day approaches, Tunisia's harbor is alive with activity. Humanitarian ships line up, loading sacks of wheat, rice, medicine, and emergency equipment. Indonesian volunteers work side by side with activists from Turkey, Europe, and Latin America. The scene is one of rare global solidarity, where people of different nations unite for a single purpose: to help Gaza. But intelligence reports warn of looming danger. Israel has intensified military activity in the Mediterranean. Patrol boats and surveillance drones scour the waters. Sources say special units are on standby, ordered to stop, inspect, and, if necessary, seize the flotilla. The news sparks anxiety among families of Indonesian volunteers back home. Even so, spirits remain unshaken. The Indonesian team insists their mission has been carefully considered, morally and strategically. For them, the greatest failure is not being detained, but failing to deliver a message of humanity. They acknowledge the risks, yet show no signs of backing down. What began as aid delivery has now grown into a powerful symbol of resistance against injustice. Every movement, every image from the decks of these ships, will soon reach television screens and social media feeds worldwide. With determination, the volunteers are ready to raise their sails, facing both the waves of the sea and the iron blockade that has kept Gaza closed for years. September 4, 2025. The moment arrives. In Tunisia's harbor, ships of the global Summit Flotilla depart one by one. Flags from dozens of nations ripple in the wind, with Indonesia's red and white proudly among them. Crowds cheer and wave as the fleet pulls away. Journalists capture every frame, broadcasting the historic moment to the world. On deck, Indonesian volunteers pray and chant before setting sail into the Mediterranean. Behind their smiles lies the awareness that they are heading straight into danger. Their voyage will take days, across waters heavily patrolled by Israel's navy. Every nautical mile brings them closer to the threat of interception. In the flotilla's command center, coordinators monitor progress using digital maps and satellite feeds. They remind all volunteers, no physical resistance, only peaceful insistence on their humanitarian purpose. This mission must be remembered as a moral stand, not a violent clash. But already, danger looms. Reports say Israeli surveillance ships are closing in from the east. The distant hum of patrol engines can be heard. Tension spreads across the decks. Still, the Indonesian volunteers remain resolute. Their goal is not to confront an enemy, but to open a path for hope. Their journey of humanity is now tested against an armed blockade. Tension peaks as the flotilla nears Israel's declared security zone. Warships appear on the horizon. Sirens blare. Loudspeakers order the fleet to halt immediately. Silence grips the decks. Hundreds of activists, including Indonesians, stand frozen, awaiting the next move. The Israeli Navy closes in, surrounding the flotilla with blinding spotlights. Over the radio, they demand the ships dock in Israel for inspection. The flotilla refuses. Their coordinators insist the mission is humanitarian only, and Gaza, not Israel, is their destination. Above, military drones circle, recording every second. On deck, Indonesian volunteers hold banners reading, "Food for Gaza, not war." The powerful image shows unarmed civilians confronting armed naval forces with nothing but words and moral courage. News of the standoff spreads rapidly. In Indonesia, families of the volunteers watch anxiously. The Foreign Ministry opens emergency communication lines with flotilla organizers. International voices call on Israel to avoid violence and respect humanitarian law. As night deepens on the Mediterranean, the world holds its breath. Will the fleet be forced to stop, or will it break through to Gaza? Night gives way to dawn, and the standoff continues. Israeli ships tighten their formation, drawing dangerously close. Spotlights blaze, engines roar. On deck, volunteers sit shoulder to shoulder, forming a human shield. They refuse to retreat. Negotiations over radio remain deadlocked. Flotilla leaders repeat their purpose: humanitarian aid only. Israeli commanders insist on inspection. Each passing minute stretches the suspense. Back in Jakarta, Indonesia's foreign ministry holds an emergency meeting. News channels air live updates. Public pressure grows. World leaders issue statements, urging Israel to stand down and allow the mission through. As the sun rises over the Mediterranean, a dramatic scene unfolds. The flotilla sails slowly onward, still bound for Gaza. Israeli warships flank them, yet no boarding occurs. Indonesian volunteers stand proudly on deck, waving the red and white flag high against the morning sky. For now, the outcome remains uncertain. But one truth is undeniable: the bravery of these volunteers has carried a message louder than weapons. Their voyage is now etched in history, a testament to humanity's stand against siege and suffering.